If she does this, you've already captured her attention. Not in the way men usually imagine, with bold words, rehearsed lines, or grand gestures designed to force recognition, but in a quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible rhythm of behavior that she alone understands. And yet, it is speaking directly to you. You might think attraction is obvious, that it arrives in dramatic declarations, or that it is earned through effort and overt performance. But no, she communicates in whispers, in fleeting glances, in the delicate way her presence lingers around yours. And if you are not watching carefully, you will see it and still not understand it. This is not about her testing you. This is not a deliberate trap or a challenge meant to confuse. This is about her instinct, her unconscious mind recognizing something in you that aligns with her curiosity, her desire, her unspoken evaluation of worth. When she mirrors your movements ever so subtly, when her eyes linger longer than they should, or when her laughter rises just a fraction higher in your presence, she is speaking to something that goes far beyond the superficial. These are the signals that reveal she is already engaging with you at a level deeper than most men ever notice. And yet, even as you sense it, most men dismiss it, mistake it for coincidence or casual friendliness. But not you. Because understanding this signal requires more than observation, it requires presence. It demands the quiet attentiveness of a man who does not need to prove himself, but is inherently aware of the energy he carries, the subtle weight of his composure, and the way it resonates in the space around him. She is testing nothing, and she is demanding nothing. She is revealing everything. And what she reveals is a reflection of your own internal state. Her attention is not something you claim. It is something you recognize, something you perceive in the subtle shifts of her behavior, and something you respond to with quiet mastery. You might ask then, what exactly she does that signals this attention? It is not one singular act. It is the convergence of small, deliberate behaviors that collectively speak louder than words ever could. She will angle her body subtly toward yours, even when her conversation appears elsewhere. She will unconsciously echo the rhythm of your speech or movement. She will reveal tiny cracks of curiosity, her brows rising in response to something you barely said, her gaze returning even when you think it has wandered, the slight, almost imperceptible smile that hints at recognition, a recognition of something private, intimate, and uniquely yours. And this is where the transformation begins. Once you understand these signals, once you perceive them for what they truly are, you begin to see women differently, yourself differently, and the very nature of attraction differently. You stop chasing illusions of control or manufactured charm. You stop believing that attraction is a game of gestures, rehearsed phrases, or forced energy. Instead, you recognize that it is a dialogue of presence, a subtle negotiation of energy, and an unspoken acknowledgement of your own value, steadiness, and composure. Her attention, you realize, is a mirror. It is a reflection of the quiet confidence you carry, the emotional steadiness you inhabit, and the self-possession you embody. And the moment you perceive it with clarity, you begin to act differently, not to manipulate, not to provoke, not to force anything, but to exist with a presence that resonates with her subconscious recognition. You understand that what she is giving you is already earned, not through effort or coercion, but by the way you hold yourself, the way you move through the world, the way you remain unshaken while the currents of curiosity and desire swirl around you. This is why most men fail to notice these signs. They are busy performing, busy proving, busy reacting. They see a smile and immediately interpret it as interest, a glance as opportunity, a laugh as permission. They miss the depth. They miss the psychological dance that is occurring beneath the surface. And so, the woman, in all her subtlety, appears inconsistent, confusing, or even disinterested. But you, by noticing, by understanding, step into a different plane. You see her signals, and you understand their meaning. You see the invisible lines of connection, the imperceptible threads of curiosity, and you know that her attention is not casual, It is deliberate, unconscious, and profoundly revealing. Now pay attention, because this is where the insight deepens. She is already testing the very thing that defines your presence, your composure. Her subtle behaviors are not just markers of curiosity, they are invitations to observe yourself, to notice how you respond when attention is given without expectation, to witness your own internal mastery in the face of unspoken signals. If you react with agitation, over-eagerness, or the clumsy desire to seize what is freely offered, the signal dissipates. But if you remain calm, attentive, and quietly powerful, the attention she offers transforms from a mere curiosity into a gravitational pull, something that draws her closer not through action, but through the simple, irresistible weight of your presence. And this is the essence of female psychology. Women are always reading energy before action, emotion before words, instinct before intention. They sense when a man is fully himself, fully composed, fully aware. The moment she recognizes that in you, she begins to respond, not consciously, perhaps not even intentionally, but in ways that are measurable, undeniable, and profoundly magnetic. And you, by understanding this, are no longer merely participating in attraction. You are observing it, guiding it, and inhabiting it with the authority of someone who understands not just the surface, but the depths beneath it. Every glance, every micro gesture, every subtle echo of her attention becomes a revelation. You learn to read it as if it were text, to interpret it with precision and patience. You see what she is unconsciously communicating, and through this perception, begin to embody a different standard of presence, one that commands curiosity, admiration, and silent respect. It is in this space, between awareness and restraint, observation and action, that true influence arises. You begin to notice that she is not inconsistent. She is responsive to the energy you carry. She does not need to speak her mind. Her body, her gaze, her rhythm speaks for her. And in understanding this, you realize that attraction is not a game of effort or desire. It is an art of presence, a mastery of self, a quiet power that cannot be replicated by words, gestures, or bravado. The moment you internalize this, your perception shifts, and with it, the very way she perceives you shifts as well. And so you sit in awareness, watching the subtle dance, seeing what most men overlook. Every glance, every lingering gesture, every subtle cue becomes a mirror, not just of her feelings, but of your own state. In observing her, you begin to observe yourself. You see where your composure wavers, where your attention drifts, and where your presence falters. And in that observation, you find the key. Mastery over attraction begins with mastery over yourself. By the time you notice her subtle signals, something far more important has already begun inside her mind. A quiet shift, a recalibration, a private reassessment of who you are and what you represent. And the most fascinating part is this: she doesn't consciously decide to think of you differently. It simply happens. Women don't fall into intrigue through logic. They fall through perception, sensation, and emotional resonance. And when your presence disrupts her internal equilibrium, she enters a psychological loop she cannot easily escape. This is where the dynamic deepens, because she is no longer reacting to your surface behavior, your words, your posture, your tone. She is now responding to the feeling of you, the emotional imprint you leave on her when you speak, when you move, when you exist near her without trying to pull her in. This is the moment most men never reach because they are too busy forcing attraction, chasing validation, or proving worth. But you, by doing none of that, create a different effect entirely. You become the exception to her subconscious expectations. Women are constantly scanning for emotional patterns. They're accustomed to men collapsing into pursuit the moment attention is given. They expect eagerness, not composure. They expect hunger, not discipline. So when she sees you remain calm, when she sees that her subtle cues don't disrupt your internal state, she begins to wonder. Wondering is the birthplace of attraction. Wondering is the engine of desire. And the moment she starts wondering about you, she starts watching you differently. She observes how you respond to the world around you, how you listen, how you move without hesitation, how you speak with a steadiness that suggests you aren't trying to impress anyone. These things create a psychological imprint because they contrast with the emotional noise she's used to. And contrast in female psychology is magnetic. It pulls her deeper. Now she's not just noticing you, she's studying you. But here is where the internal shift becomes profound. She begins to project onto you. Projection is the single most powerful force in early attraction. Her mind starts filling in the blanks with assumptions, hopes, fantasies, and interpretations of who you might be, who you could be, and how you might make her feel. She begins constructing an internal version of you, an idealized silhouette shaped partly by your composure and partly by her imagination. And women fall for silhouettes before they fall for men. This is the psychological mechanism most men never understand. Male desire is visual and immediate. Female desire is psychological and cumulative. She builds you layer by layer in her mind, each perception stacking onto the next, until the idea of you becomes emotionally charged. An emotional charge is attention. Once she forms emotional charge, you are no longer just a man, you're a symbol, a question, a mystery, an emotional imprint she needs to resolve. This is why your restraint matters. The moment you chase, the moment you reveal need, the silhouette collapses. The projection dissolves, the mystery evaporates, and she returns to seeing you as ordinary. Women do not lose attraction suddenly, they lose the image they were creating. Once the image shatters, so does the intrigue. But if you maintain your presence, if you remain grounded, calm, and internally centered, the projection intensifies. She starts testing the image, testing you, not to undermine you, but to confirm the emotional truth she sees emerging. She watches how you handle discomfort, how you handle challenge, how you handle silence. Silence, especially, becomes a field of revelation. Because most men rush to fill it, you do not. And this quiet resistance to impulsive action magnifies your perceived value. At this stage, a psychological phenomenon emerges, attentional fixation. Her mind keeps returning to you without meaning to. She replays interactions. She re-examines small details. She imagines alternative conversations. She wonders why your presence lingers in her thoughts longer than she expected. She feels drawn in by something she can't quite articulate. Attention turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into anticipation. And anticipation turns into emotional investment. Here's the deeper truth. Women fall for men who make them feel something they cannot fully decode. Not confusion, depth. Not uncertainty, intrigue. Not chaos, contrast. You represent a psychological contrast in her internal world. She cannot categorize you. She cannot predict you. And the human mind is irresistibly drawn to what it cannot predict. This is where her behavior begins to shift in ways even she doesn't consciously detect. She becomes more attuned to your presence. She reacts faster to your speech. She positions herself closer without appearing intentional. She introduces small conversational threads hoping you'll pick them up. And even when she tries to stay neutral, her subconscious leaks through. The softening of her tone, the dilation of her gaze, the slight lift of her posture when you enter a room. These micro shifts are not coincidence. They are markers that her mind has placed you in a category of heightened significance. Not love, not commitment, not infatuation, but possibility. And possibility is where attraction is born, where respect grows, and where emotional investment takes root. But there's another layer, deeper and more revealing. She begins measuring herself in your presence. Women do this only with men they feel drawn toward. She becomes more aware of her gestures, her tone, her appearance. She adapts subtly. She refines details you wouldn't even notice. And this internal adjustment is not about impressing you. It's about aligning with the silhouette she's created of you. She wants to match the energy she perceives in you. She wants to rise to the level of your composure. This is the unspoken dynamic that separates men she respects from men she entertains. She doesn't just react to you, she calibrates herself around you. And now you see the truth. Her attention wasn't an accident, wasn't a coincidence, wasn't a casual flicker of interest. It was a psychological shift triggered by who you are, by the energy you carry, and by the silent discipline you embody. She's already invested. Not emotionally overstretched, not infatuated, but engaged on a level that shapes her perception of you long before anything is said aloud. In this space, you hold the advantage, because you understand the internal mechanics of her desire, while she only feels the effects. And that awareness is the beginning of true masculine presence. There comes a moment in this silent progression where her attention is no longer just attention, it becomes gravity. You feel it not because she declares anything or behaves dramatically, but because there is a shift in how she occupies space around you. She is still subtle, still composed, still behaving normally, yet there is a new charge in the air, a quiet pull that wasn't there before. And the most fascinating part is that she isn't intentionally trying to draw you in. Her subconscious is doing the work long before her conscious mind catches up. This is the stage where she starts experiencing what psychologists call emotional resonance. You trigger something in her, an internal response that makes her more receptive, more attuned, more open to the idea of you. Not through words, not through charm, but through presence. Your calmness, your steadiness, your lack of emotional neediness creates a psychological vacuum she instinctively wants to fill. Women move toward emotional stability the way plants move toward sunlight. It's automatic, instinctive, deeply wired. And yet, this is also the stage where subtle contradictions appear in her behavior. She may seem warm one moment and distant the next, engaged one day and reserved the next. Not because she's losing interest, but because her mind is negotiating with itself. Her curiosity pushes forward, but her self-protection pulls back. Her desire to explore you grows stronger, but her instinct to remain guarded still lingers. This internal conflict is a sign that she feels something that matters. Meaningless attraction is simple. Real intrigue is complicated. You'll notice her reactions start changing, not dramatically, but unmistakably. She becomes more sensitive to your tone, more responsive to your silence, more aware of your mood. Her attention sharpens in ways she may not even notice. If you speak, she listens with deeper intent. If you withdraw, she feels the absence more than she should. If you appear distracted, she subtly seeks to regain your focus. These responses are involuntary markers of emotional investment, the kind that only emerge when a woman feels a man's presence in her emotional system. But here is the critical truth most men never understand. Her attention becomes meaningful only when it begins to challenge her self-perception. When a woman starts to see herself differently through the way she reacts to you, she enters a stage of psychological vulnerability that amplifies desire. She wonders why she cares what you think, why your presence steadies her, why your calmness affects her more than she expected. These questions create an internal loop she cannot easily escape. And you, without forcing anything, become the center of that loop. This is where your power lies, not in chasing her, not in decoding every gesture, but in holding your center while she orbits between curiosity and self-discovery. The more you remain grounded, the more she feels drawn. The more you stay unshaken, the more she becomes aware of her own emotional fluctuations. Women are attracted to men who make them aware of their emotional depth, not through chaos, but through contrast. Your steadiness becomes the mirror in which she sees the truth of her own reactions. As this process deepens, you may notice her engaging in small acts of vulnerability. She reveals personal details she normally guards. She initiates conversation for reasons she pretends are casual. She gives you fragments of her inner world as if testing whether you can hold them without judgment. She may speak of past experiences, future concerns, or private insecurities, not dramatically, but with a softness that signals trust beginning to form. This type of vulnerability does not appear around men she finds unremarkable. It is a sign of emotional crossing, a threshold where she begins to see you not just as a presence, but as a possibility. But here is the most important part. At this stage, she is far more affected by how you make her feel about herself than by who you appear to be. If your presence makes her feel feminine, grounded, expressive, or deeply seen, her emotional investment strengthens. If your presence makes her feel reactive, anxious, or uncertain, her instincts retreat. Men often try to win a woman's affection by displaying value, but real attraction is shaped by how she experiences herself in your presence. Women attach to the emotional version of themselves that emerges around you. This is why composure, discipline, and internal steadiness are not just traits, they are emotional catalysts. They shape her internal world. They influence her emotional rhythm. They set the tone of her interactions. And if the tone you set amplifies her sense of depth, safety, or self-awareness, she naturally moves closer. From here, attraction becomes less about signs and more about momentum. You will feel the shift in her energy, an increased willingness to open the door for deeper interaction, a readiness to explore where the connection leads, a quiet hopefulness she tries to disguise under casual behavior. She may not articulate it, but her psychology reveals it through consistent, subtle alignment with your presence. This is the point where her attention is no longer fragile or fleeting. It has weight. It has emotional density. She begins to invest not out of curiosity alone, but out of the feeling that you awaken a version of her that she cannot access elsewhere. And that is the real secret of female psychology. A woman stays where she feels herself expanding,